Good morning, all. We will start our next session after 5 minutes. Uh, Thank you. Welcome, sir, Dr. Vivek, sir. Hello, am I audible?
I know that. Now I'll be audible to you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
My mic was off. Yeah, so good morning. Very good morning to you.
Very good morning, sir.
Yes, Dr. Shabir, how are you?
Fine, sir. How are you too?
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine. Looks like you're organizing a very big event. So tell me what I have to do. The moment you will say, I'll start my lecture.
Just 2 minutes. She'll be giving you an introduction, and then you can start within 2 minutes.
Yeah, but keep the introduction very small.
Yes,
Sure.
it is very
I
small.
don't want too many. Yeah, please.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, sir. Very good morning to one and all. On behalf of Electrical Engineering Department, SCET, and our entire team of FDP, I warmly welcome our eminent speaker, Dr. Vivek Agarwal, sir. He is a professor at Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Bombay. He has completed his PhD from University of Victoria, Canada. He has more than 25 years of teaching experience. He is associated with many professional bodies like IEEE USA, IT India, Life Member ISTE, INA, etc. Under his supervision, more than 38 PhD theses are completed. As a principal investigator, he has done many projects and consultancies. He has registered for more than 17 patents. He has published more than 200 papers at various journals and conferences at national and international level. He received many awards and honors at national and international levels. Today, Sir will share his experience on storage in microgrid. Sir, we are delighted to have you with us. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction, of which I am hardly worthy. Thank you so much. And thanks for this opportunity to speak to your participants in this course, which I can see it's a very big event which has been organized. So thanks to the organizers. Now I'll be speaking today on energy storage in microgrid and its importance. I'll be speaking for, I think, about 1 hour and 15 minutes. I'll just see. It might go a little bit above that or less than that. But you please stop me when I am exceeding my time so that I know that I have to stop. I'll just share my screen with you. If you allow me, I'll share the presentation, the PPT file with you. Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, here we go. All right. Just 1 second. So I can flip it nicely, no problem. Okay, so I think I have almost like 30-40 slides here. And it might take a little longer than I expected, but then let's have a discussion. So I encourage all the participants to stop me during the lecture and ask me questions or ask me afterwards, whatever you prefer. It's all right with me. So let's begin. A role of energy storage in microgrids. Okay, so I'm assuming that this audience has a very wide range. So some people are already experts who have been using storage and microgrids in their regular research work, and there are people on the other spectrum, on the other side of the spectrum, who are not really yet very well conversant with this topic. So I'll just keep that range in mind. So what I've done is I have kept the range of the presentation very wide. So you will see that I'll be speaking about some of the very basic things, and then I'll be taking to you to a little higher end of the spectrum, and we'll see how it goes. So the outline of my talk is going to be, first I'll be speaking about the structure and the composition of a typical microgrid, and Then we'll see the two major modes of operation of the microgrids, the grid connected and islanding mode. We will see a very important issue that actually happens with microgrids, particularly when they are operating in islanded mode. That is when the supply and the demand, they are out of sync with each other, which means that there is an imbalance between the two. And we'll just try to see what are the consequences and how we can control them. And actually, it is while talking about those consequences that we'll talk about the energy storage and its introduction to the microgrid. So we'll see its importance with that. And the other related issue is the stability. In fact, the third, fourth, and the fifth point, they are very highly related to each other, as we will see during the lecture. I'll talk a little bit about the typical energy storage devices. I've listed some of them which are used for with the microgrids, but not all. Okay. Also, my objective is not to really give you too many details about the principles or the working of these storage devices. I just introduce you to the very, very basic concepts of that and review and refresh your memory a bit about them. That's all. Then we'll be talking about the interfacing of the energy storage with microgrids, and we'll see several applications with the help of that. And we'll try to, with that, with the help of those examples, we'll try to establish the importance of energy storage in microgrids. Okay, so usually when I start any such lectures on microgrids and so on, I usually tell a story to the participants. Okay, and that I have been doing for the last, I don't know, many lectures, because I have given a few lectures on this topic before. I always tell the story. That is to establish, you know, all the underlying, I would say, concepts and facts about the power systems that we see around us, the conventional power system, and then we move on to the microgrid from there. It becomes easy for us to understand. So this story actually dates back to the late 19th century. I'm talking about a time which was, we had the geniuses like Thomas Alva Edison and people like Nikola Tesla, who were at that time at the peak of their research. And this happened. Most of this story, it actually happened in America and part of it in Europe. So people were looking for many things at that time. And remember, the only source of energy at that time, the major source, was either coming through the batteries, which were actually developed by Voltas long back, and also through generators. So there were some generators which were actually developed right from the time of Faraday, and this was going on. Now, Edison was a very, he basically favored, or I should say patronized, the DC system, the direct current system. Thomas Alva Edison. And in fact, what he did, he actually created a small DC microgrid in the city square in New York, Manhattan area, where they actually had these bulbs, incandescent bulbs, which were actually lighted with the help of generators. And the prime mover for these generators were horses. Okay, so that I think would be among the first microgrid we can say that the world saw. That was the first one. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, Edison favored the direct current all the time, and Nikola Tesla and Westinghouse, for whom Tesla was working, the famous Westinghouse company, they actually favored the AC system. So much, such was their competition with each other that Edison actually organized one demonstration in the city square in which he used AC, and then he actually got one elephant electrocuted. The idea was to tell the people that, you see, if the AC can electrocute a big animal like elephant, then imagine what it will do to you. So the idea was to say it's not safe. But then people realized that a DC could have killed the elephant even worse, and they understood that that really didn't really work. Okay, so of course Thomas Alva Edison was a very great inventor, and he actually invented several things. But here on this front, he lost to the people who were proposing AC systems. One of the main reasons for this was that there was no way you could boost the DC voltage. Remember, those were the days when there was no electronics or power electronics. There were no semiconductor devices and so on. The other consequence of this was that there was no semiconductor electronics and so on. The other consequence was that there were no DC loads, except for a few like heaters and bulbs and so on, and also in the DC traction systems, the railway systems, the DC loads were very few. On the other hand, if you look at the AC systems, they soon started becoming popular. And the major reason for their popularity was the the invention of the transformer, in which this, Stanley played a very important role. And Nikola Tesla, he himself proposed the induction motor, the famous induction motor, which actually, of course, came up after the invention of Ferrari in Italy, Europe, that is. Okay, so AC systems, because of the fact that you could actually boost the AC voltage, you can buck it or step it down the way you like, and the transformers coming in, it was the AC which won. And this particular fight between Edison and Tesla on DC versus AC is also called the famous war of currents, DC currents versus AC currents. All right, so this is the end of the part 1 of the story. Let's see now the part 2 of the story. Now, the AC systems established themselves, and people said, all right, let us now start developing power plants. And many power plants started coming in. The first major power station coming in the Great Lake area in the United States, and the one coming up in England, in Germany, and also in Italy, and so on. So Europeans were not very far behind. In fact, somewhere at some places they were hand in hand with the American researchers. The same people, they are the same people after all, America and Europe. Then soon these power systems, AC power systems, they also basically spread to other places in Asia, for example, Japan, Australia, and so on. And India and China also got it eventually in 1930s and 1940s and so on. Okay, now, one of the things which when people started planning these systems, late 19th century and early 20th century, okay, they understood that the prime mover for these power plants has to be driven by thermal energy, which can be done only by burning fossil fuel like coal and wood and so on, and petroleum. They understood that. So what they did, the planning was such that typically the power plant was built outside the limits of the city, of any city, and then the power would be carried over these over the transmission lines over to the distribution end in the city, within the city, where there would be a transformer to step it down. Because when you are transmitting it from the generation part, you actually keep the voltages high. I'm sure you know that that is to limit the losses, to actually increase the efficiency of transmission. So high voltages. Now this kind of thing was not possible with Edison's DC. Okay, so that is the reason the AC, major reason for the AC to win actually. Now these plants were outside the city, carrying the electricity over to the city, and people using it. Now soon the demand for electricity started increasing because there were several applications and the uses they came up, and more people started using electricity. That's number one. Number two, the population also started rising. Okay, so a population which was pretty low in the beginning, it started really rising. In fact, the use of electricity became a symbol of the advancement of a society. So how much electricity is being consumed by a society or by a community, that actually reflected how advanced they are. So very soon what happened, that the city limits started expanding. And when they started expanding, they actually engulfed power plants, which were earlier outside the city, but now they came within the periphery of the city. And as the things happened, with further advancement, with further requirement of electrical energy or electricity, and with more and more population using electricity, it so happened that these power plants eventually became very much part of the city. Now, people who have used or who have seen in some way or the other the use of fossil fuels, for example, in the ovens that are being used domestically in India. You have seen there. You have seen it in the vehicles, for example. You know that what kind of emissions take place, what kind of pollution they can spread. And you know that the 70s and the 80s is a time when people started realizing, and somewhere around the same time or a bit later, there was, this realization started befalling on the people, dawning on the people that, the ozone layer is getting depleted. So there were people, there were activists which actually started fighting for this. And today you see many of them, many people who are actually fighting for the environmental cleanliness. But those were the days when it just started. So people started realizing that. Okay. The other thing, of course, was that the dependence of these power plants on the fossil fuels was another very big issue, because it was both politically and in some ways strategically important aspect. The oil producing nations, the OPEC, the organization, it actually went into some sort of a policy that they would at least keep the price of the petrol or petroleum products to a certain point. So the Western countries like America and Europe, they will not be able to get it at a very cheap price. Okay, and likewise, it was the case with other countries as well, including India. So overall, what we see is that the conventional fuels, the fossil fuels, that is, they cause pollution. So we want to minimize or eliminate them. They are all the ones which are available in the Earth's crust. You know how, I'm sure you have read somewhere or the other, how the petroleum products were formed, how the coal was formed, and so on. Now they are getting depleted. I also mentioned to you just now about the price. That became an important issue. So environment, the fact that they will be depleting, and their cost factors and so on, together has led people to look for alternate energy sources. The major alternate sources which are being looked at the moment are, for example, the solar photovoltaics, the solar thermal energy that was used even earlier than that, then the wind energy quite a bit, fuel cell stacks, or which are used for to convert hydrogen energy into electricity, that one, and geothermal energy and so on. So there were many such micro turbines, micro hydro, and all these things, they started coming in. So people started saying that, okay, instead of using the fossil fuels, let's use some of these, which are, because they do not cause any environmental.
Hello. Hello, sir. I think some network issue at sir sides. All of you please stay connected. It is my kind request to all of you, please stay connected. Sir will quickly join. There is some network issue from sir side.